Welcome to the Reinvention Code. I'm your host, Dorinda Walker. Reinvention isn't random, it has a code. On this podcast, we'll explore what it really takes to navigate life's transitions with introspection, faith, and strategy. If you're evolving, rebuilding, or stepping into a new season, you're not just starting over, you're leveling up. Let's decode your next chapter together. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode. Today's episode is emotional for me. I'm going to dig deep into loss, grief, and some of the lessons I've learned along the way. Like many of you who are listening, I've buried several people in my life that I've loved deeply. My grandparents, my mother, my husband, my father, and so many relatives and friends. And what I've realized is that my grief has never felt the same twice. And here's how I'll explain it. When my mother passed, I felt sadness, right? But also relief. We had time to heal. We had time to forgive. We had time to grow. She died in my home in hospice care, surrounded by family. Her body had been ravaged by cancer, and addiction had already stolen so much from her life. So when she left this earth, I felt peace, knowing she was no longer suffering. I remember finding 20 bags of heroin in her purse after she died. And as I flushed it down the toilet, I remember thinking, that demon can no longer control my mother. She's at peace in God's arms. On the flip side, when my husband died, it felt like a piece of me was missing. But even in that grief, there was gratitude because we had love, we had partnership, we had adulthood together. I was with him for 33 years, more than half my life. And we built a legacy in our children and our granddaughter. So I'm learning to live my life fully because that's what he would have wanted from me, right? So my grief there carries gratitude, if that makes sense. But when I think about my father, it still feels like a punch in the gut. And here's the part that took me years to understand. When I sit with my father's memory, I don't feel like the woman I am today. I feel like the lost teenage girl because I lost my dad at 17. And that's what I want to talk about today. The father wound that no one talks about. We joke about daddy issues, we meme it, we minimize it, and we make it cute, right? But daddy issues aren't a joke. The father wound isn't a punchline, it's attachment. And attachment shapes how we love, how we lead, and how we survive. I've read so many psychology books on this because this is an area of my life where I really struggled with dealing with my father's death. Because that attachment shapes how we love, how we lead, how we survive. A father doesn't have to be physically absent to create a wound, right? He can be present and still emotionally inconsistent. He can love you and still not be stable. He can adore you and still not be formed. I'm trying to think of a way to explain it, but there's a book called Man Code by Dorinda Walker, where he talks about the difference between being a male and a man and how a lot of males appear in a grown man's body, right? Because physically they look like a man, but mentally they don't have the maturity or emotional intelligence or servant leadership to show up fully in their manhood, right? So that's what I mean by not being truly formed as a man. And my father was the youngest of three, the only boy, loved so deeply, protected fiercely, but he was never required to become accountable. And love without accountability doesn't produce strength. It produces dependency. Now let me be clear. My grandparents were great parents to their children. They did the best they could, so by no means is this meant to devalue their roles as parents. They were great parents. My father was surrounded by love, but somewhere along the way, he never developed the tools to stand on his own. So, although my father was surrounded by love, somewhere along the way, he never developed the tools to stand on his own. And the truth is, many families know this story. Children can grow up in the same home with the same love and guidance and still become very different adults. Some learn how to stand early, others spend much longer trying to find their balance. And I love my father so much that I tried to stand for him at times. Some little girls lose their fathers. Some little girls become their father's strength. I was emotionally parenting both of my parents at times, managing moods, managing the chaos of their addiction, managing the instability of their choices due to their addiction. That kind of childhood does something to you, right? You grow up fast on the outside, but a part of you freezes at the age of rupture. And for me, that age of rupture was that 17-year-old Dorinda. You become the strong one, the reliable one, the mature one, the one who doesn't fall apart. Strength became my identity, not because I was confident, but because survival required it. So when my father died, I didn't just lose him, I lost the possibility of who he might have become. The sober father, the healed father, the present grandfather. I lost potential, right? And potential grief is one of the hardest forms of grief. And my anger did not have one address. I've been angry at God. I've been angry at addiction, angry at time, angry at myself most of all. Because when loss happens in chaos, part of you stays there. Of course, I grew up, but part of me stayed in that place where that 17-year-old girl ruptured. That's why even now, decades later, when I sit with his memory, I still feel like that teenage girl. Not the executive, not the author, not the strategist, but the girl. That 17-year-old girl. And that matters. I have to acknowledge her in order to heal. Because adult grief feels different than childhood grief. And when you lose someone after healing, the grief feels softer, right? With the example of my mother, right? I was able to find peace in her passing. But when you lose someone before healing, it's sharp, like that punch in the gut that I said earlier. So if you're relating to what I'm saying, right? I have to ask you a question. If you've always been the strong one, who did you become strong for? Were you protecting a parent, shielding siblings, absorbing emotional instability? Do you feel most valuable when you're needed? If no one needs you, do you feel irrelevant? Are you attracted to potential more than peace? Do you find yourself drawn to people who need fixing? Do you struggle to receive? Do you hate asking for help? Because I do. For years, I thought my strength was independence. But independence born from trauma is isolation in disguise. I learned early that if I didn't hold things together, no one would. So asking for help doesn't just feel uncomfortable. For me, it felt unsafe. It felt like I was weak, and it made me feel like I was a failure. But what I realized is this: strength that cannot receive is not strength, it's protection. I'll say it again. Strength that cannot receive is not strength, it's protection. And protection has an expiration date. So here's another layer to it. I struggled with people pleasing until I hit 40. I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to disappoint anyone because somewhere deep down there was a belief. If I'm good enough, they'll stay. If I perform well enough, I won't be judged or abandoned. Then something happened in my career that changed me, right? While I was in corporate America, I sponsored a women's event, right? And when it was over, there was this networking session. And my friend and colleague, Alicia Alston, approached me and she said, Dorinda, there's so many young women asking to meet you, but they're afraid to approach you. And I remember looking at Alicia like, what you talking about, Willis, right? Because I was baffled. And I said, why? Just tell them to come over. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Dorinda, do you realize you've made it? You're the executive we aspired to be early in our careers. People look up to you. And in that moment, something clicked. I was so busy doing the work, seeking validation, trying to prove myself, that I had never stopped to embrace what I had already accomplished. I was still operating like I had something to prove, still carrying shame about not having a college degree, still striving for other people's approval. And that's when I realized something. I no longer needed anyone else's validation. I needed alignment for my life because I was already God qualified. Not because I checked every box, but because purpose had already confirmed me. That was the day I decided that I would no longer give in to people pleasing. And I became unapologetically me. So I want to give Alicia Austin a shout out for being God's messenger that day. I don't know if I ever told her how that changed my perspective, but I appreciate you, Alicia. And I thank God for putting you in my life. And here's another truth. Stopping the people pleasing is one layer of healing. Learning to receive is another, and I'm still learning that. Now I'm going to get deep, y'all, because there's another layer to this. When your earthly father is inconsistent, it can distort how you view God as your father. You can trust God as creator, as provider, as savior, but trusting him as father, that hits a little different because father is supposed to mean safety, consistency, protection. And when that blueprint is fractured, it takes time to rebuild it. Scripture says God is a father to the fatherless, right? But when your experience of fatherhood has been complicated, learning to receive God in that way can take time. I've been angry at God. I've asked God why. I wrestled with my faith. We've all heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. And if we're honest, most of us know someone who seems stuck in the past, holding on to anger so tightly that it's hard to even be around them. I'm going to stop there because I know y'all know somebody and can relate to what I'm talking about. I'm going to stop there and let you sit with that, right? Because sometimes that person is a family member, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes, if we're honest enough, it's been us. But what I'm learning is this: anger is often grief that hasn't found language. I'll say that again. Anger is often grief that hasn't found language. And healing doesn't mean I stop feeling, it just means I stop running. I put in the work so that I can heal and let go of the baggage that's holding me down. And during the transformation training, my coach Sylvia Hyde gave us an exercise that changed my life. We had to separate facts from beliefs. And I realized something that shook me. Many of the things I believed about myself weren't facts. They were conclusions I formed in survival. So I'll give you an example. Fact, my father struggled with addiction. My belief was I'm responsible for the men in my life. Fact, I didn't have a college degree. My belief was that I was unworthy. Fact, I became strong early. Belief, I could never depend on anyone. Fact, I survived chaos. But my belief was I must always be in control. When I separated facts from beliefs, I realized I had been living under narratives I never consciously chose. And what you don't examine, you repeat. But here's the brilliant part about that exercise. Beliefs can be questioned, and what can be questioned can be rewritten. The teenage Dorinda doesn't get to drive anymore. She gets to rest. But let me share something psychologists often say about adult trauma. When pain happens early in life, part of us can get emotionally frozen at the age where the rupture happened. So for me, that rupture was at 17 when I lost my father. So even when we grow into successful adults, we build careers, we raise families, we lead organizations, there can still be moments when something triggers us and suddenly we don't feel like the grown version of ourselves anymore. We feel younger, more vulnerable, and sometimes powerless. And it's confusing because logically we know we're capable, right? But emotionally, something inside us is reacting from an older wound. Another thing psychologists talk about is control. When your childhood environment was unpredictable, controlling things becomes a way to create safety. You can plan everything, you can manage everything, you can overfunction. You become the one everyone depends on, and people praise you for it. They call you strong, they call you reliable, they call you a leader. But sometimes what looks like strength is actually a coping strategy that was built in chaos. And here's the tricky part: you can become very successful using survival strategies, right? You can build a career, you can lead teams, you can accomplish extraordinary things. I'm living proof of that. But success does not automatically bring peace because success built on survival still carries the nervous system of survival, if that makes sense. And that's why healing matters. Psychologists say the goal of healing isn't to erase the past, it's integration. And integration means your past is acknowledged, understood, and no longer driving the car. You can remember your story without being trapped in it. You can feel the emotion without being controlled by it. You can honor the child you were while allowing the adult you've become to lead your life. And that is the work. Not pretending the pain didn't happen, but refusing to let it define the rest of your story. So let's close by cracking today's code. This episode wasn't just about grief. It was about understanding how unresolved pain shapes the way we move through life, right? So code number 1, strength developed in survival is not always healthy strength. Sometimes it's protection, and protection eventually needs healing. Code number 2, potential grief is real grief. When someone dies before healing happens, you grieve not only who they were, but who they might have become. Code number 3, independence born from trauma is often isolation. True strength includes the ability to receive. Code number 4, not every belief you carry is a fact. Many of them were formed in survival, and what you can question, you can rewrite. Healing isn't about staying stuck in your story. It's about walking forward lighter without all of the baggage from your past. Every new chapter requires a new version of you, and sometimes the only thing standing between you and your next level is an old belief you've never examined. So I want you to take a deep breath. Examine the belief, rewrite the narrative, and step forward lighter. Next week, I'm really excited to introduce my first podcast guest, Sherelle Gross. She's a visionary legal executive and a certified life coach whose own journey of transformation will inspire you. Until then, I wish you much peace, abundant joy, and many blessings. If this episode resonated with you, please share it. Please subscribe to my podcast on whatever platform you listen to. I'm on YouTube. You can find all the links on my website, dorindawalker.com. And I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Reinvention Code. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who's stepping into their next season. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Remember, reinvention isn't random. It has a code. I'll see you next time.